Most private club leaders are flying blind when it comes to projecting future membership growth. They're not using software that's actually built for member acquisition. They don't have a real CRM beyond a spreadsheet or a glorified spreadsheet. They don't have email automation. And in most clubs, there's no real lead measurement that shows the long-term health of their prospective member pipeline, which means there's really no real-time visibility into the future health of the club. In this episode, I'm talking with Patrick Damer, Vice President of Revenue Operations at Arcis Golf Management. Since joining Arcis in 2013, Patrick has helped scale their business that now supports nearly 70 private, resort, and daily fee properties across the country. They started with just 3 when he first joined, and they were a startup back then, and now the portfolio is over $1 billion. Over the past few years, Patrick and his team have implemented HubSpot software across Arcis Golf's entire operation. And what he's done at an enterprise scale is something you can absolutely do at your club as a standalone operation. In our conversation, we talk about how Arcis removed friction from the sales and marketing process, how they've created visibility across the entire membership pipeline, and how you can do the same at your club. Here's my conversation with Patrick Damer of Arcis Golf. You're listening to Crushing Club Marketing, a podcast for progressive club leaders ready to increase their club's revenue. Time for change begins right now. Well, Pat, thanks so much for joining me.
Great to be with you, Ed.
So let's jump into it. I mean, you've been with Arcis for 12 years. I mean, and you've helped Arcis grow from 3 clubs to 70 properties and $1 billion portfolio. I mean, this is a massive organization at this point. But can you take us back to the early days, to when things were just getting started, and what were some of the operational and revenue challenges you faced, and without going back to the beginning of time, but what were the things that you felt like you had to address from early on to really build this thing?
Yeah, no, it's fun because I think this time of year we get a bit reflective anyway, right, in terms of the past year and accomplishments. But yeah, early on, it was it's interesting, and I was blessed to asked to take a seat on this rocket ship that's been Arcis, right? So, and you don't ask what's my seat, right? The old saying, don't ask what your seat is, just get on the rocket ship. So, but I think initially you're going in and our clubs, first 3 clubs in the portfolio, 2 in Denver, Pinery and Perdera, and then it was TPC Snoqualmie Ridge. Now the club at Snoqualmie Ridge up in outside Seattle. And there was just a handful of us, of course, right, at the beginning, and so you're trying to get your arms around everything, right, in terms of first and foremost, it always comes back to the people. Like I know you and I could probably tech nerd out on a bunch of stuff, but when you acquire clubs, it's always first and foremost about the people at the end of the day, because you're going to you've got staff and team members that are like, okay, what does this mean for me? And the members the same way, right? And I think one of the things I think we do really well is after acquisition, we go in and we sit down and we do focus groups, and we try to talk to as many members in person as we can, because at the end of the day, it's their club, right? We've been we own it, operate it, but it doesn't work if we don't have their input. We're not listening to them. So that's early on, you're identifying team members, and then for me, from a revenue standpoint, it's back then, it was really about the website, email marketing, most clubs. I think we were joking about early CRMs, and I think it was Act. I think you got the box.
Right. Yeah,
it was
yeah.
Act, right? With the
Act. Yeah.
right with the little CD-ROM that I'm dating myself here severely, but yeah, I think they may have had like an Act CRM.
Probably if they
or
were advanced, right? I mean, if they were
if they were
advanced, they had
advanced.
right.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
I've seen my share of spreadsheets and sticky notes as a CRM, which is always surprising. So yeah, so it's really understanding the people, the club's position in the market. Obviously, you're going to take a look at the competitive set, um,
Mhm.
and then it's really about, okay, how are we gonna grow the club? The investments back into the club. And that's always been part of our DNA. We've had, some recent acquisitions this year, and it's always like, okay, we're making a significant investment, and where should that go? What are the priorities? And sometimes, some of it is, you're looking at deferred, some deferred maintenance or things that are impactful to the member experience, but
Mhm.
nobody sees them. HVAC and irrigation pumps on the golf course. But you need that impactful investment in the club, right? Whether that's
Mhm.
upgrading fitness or equipment or things like that. So but yeah,
It
it's interesting because I mean I think it's um again early on, uh me personally, I was kind of a jack of all trades. I've been, like, I like to say, I've been hauling golf bags for a really long time now. So which is true,
yeah.
um but you're kind of you're bouncing around in a lot of different areas, and um yeah,
But
just
at
again
what
caring
point
for the people.
yeah, and at what point though, Pat, just thinking about like some of the stuff you're mentioning about the HVAC and irrigation and things like that, I think when people think of companies like Arcis or Invited, they think, oh, it's just, they're just going to try to cut expenses, take care of their bare minimum. But really, I mean, in the time that I've known you, you've been actively focused on growing through revenue operations and finding new ways to streamline and get smarter in that way. What led you from where you were to that path? Was that part of it all the way all along, or is that something where you were like at one point, like, hang on a second, let's look at this differently?
Well, I think it's, I've been fortunate. I've had a ton of people luck in my career. And I mean, I can essentially trace, I'll admit to it, about a 40-year career in this space to there's about four people, that connect me over those 40 years. And, our CEO and founder, Blake Walker, who I've worked with for, 20 plus years now, um, we've had these declare your major conversations over the years, and it's really, you know getting people in, what they're good at and what they like to do. Um, and even, and I came up, I hauled golf bags, I became a PGA professional. So I really came up through the golf operations piece of it. Um, Went into food and beverage, was a clubhouse manager, GM, and all of that. But what I figured out early on is revenue fixes a lot of things, right? It's much easier to go into a conversation going, "Hey, we're driving revenue, so of course now we have X to invest back into the club."
Mhm.
And those are way more fun conversations than it's like, okay, we're not driving revenue, we're not, and we're gonna have to go, look at these cuts or whatever. So I've always, again, early on, and in fact, I did an internship with, it was then Club Corp, back in the day, and worked in the membership department at one of their private clubs in Florida, and that really got me interested in membership marketing, and so I've always had, it's like, okay, how do we, like, I love the game of golf. I want other people to enjoy it and come enjoy a club experience and have all of that. So that's really my bias. So it's always like, okay, how do I get more people to come experience it? So yeah, so I've always had this, I guess, focus on driving revenue.
Yeah, and yet, when you look at so much club software today, it's really about the management side, the back end, right? The POS, the billing, tea time members, communications, all that stuff. And yet the software that you're using, I mean, a big HubSpot user, for people that aren't really clear about like the difference between, operational software and a software that's really built for sales and marketing, um, how could you help people understand why that's relevant for, in the club space?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's if you take they're really two separate animals, right? I think over here, we've got well, we would probably be referred to as an ERP, right? An enterprise system, right? Platform, and that's your like you said, right? That's your membership management module and your dining module, T sheet, point of sale, member billing, and all of that. And right, that's your operational piece. Um, and over here, again, yeah, we're really big. I should probably put an orange shirt on, right? Because we are. We're
The
we're
sprocket.
right. Um, yeah, we're a big believer in the HubSpot platform. But it's really and honestly, early on when we were at 5 clubs in the portfolio, we used Salesforce and we pivoted off that, went to a different, a more it was another platform. I'm not going to say it was a CRM. You had some lead management capability, but it also was really good at like BEOs and private event and that type of space. And
Mhm.
anyway, when as we grew as a company, certainly like any company, right, our needs change. And we looked at it because we had kind of this quasi CRM, but I was guilty of it. I was a bit of a MacGyver where it's like, right, I need to solve for automated emails or pre-arrival messaging or UTM tracking or whatever. So it was always like, oh, I'm gonna go find this tool and bolt it on and this tool. And you get used to like just taking Zapier and Airtable and all these other things and kind of making it work. But again, it's not designed and built. It's not purposely built for that. Um, so we really, we look at HubSpot and we're enterprise across the board. So when it comes to email marketing, I'm in that tool. And then everybody's in that tool. So when we look at email health score and members unsubscribe accidentally to their emails because all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm not getting the monthly newsletter, I'm not getting this, and they look and they have accidentally unsubscribed. Well, it's all in one space, right? So anybody on our team could go in and go, oh, hey, let's fix that, right? Let's get you opted back in.
Mhm.
So having all of that, kind of non-operational information live in HubSpot, allows us to both, from a sales and marketing standpoint, but just overall communications to the members too, because it's purpose built, right? It's
Mhm.
designed to do that.
Mhm.
Where there's a lot of players in that other space, and they're really good at that. But that's I think that's an entirely different expertise, if you
Mhm.
will, on that side
Mhm.
of it.
And then, so have you built so for your back end, that's all Arcis custom built. I mean, you built that for for your 70 properties. And then I'm assuming you've just built an integration between HubSpot and your ERP basically, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so we're bringing that data over. So again, we can take a look at it, whether it's on a dashboard or you have well, one of the things this is interesting. We used a third party company for post consumption survey. So right, you want to know what the experience was like. That's really
Mhm.
we talk about feedback as a gift as a company, and so we recently um, moved to HubSpot Service Hub for any post consumption surveys. And again, with the tools in HubSpot with AI, and we have what we call MSOs or multi-site operators who oversee several properties. For them, they through an AI tool, they can go get a synopsis of all of their properties. So they don't have to read every survey anymore. They can get an understanding, if there's an issue, both, an issue they need to deal with, or they want to highlight, maybe somebody highlighted a team member they want to recognize, they can get that out of that synopsis and not drilling into it. But more importantly, now all of that data is living on that contact record, that member
Mhm.
record. So it's accessible to the team, right?
Yeah, yeah, that I love. That's awesome. So, and let's just dive into that a little bit deeper, so people can connect dots, because I think that's where some of the opportunities are for clubs today, is really like having, you know, whether it's NPS survey, feedback connected to the contact record. Um, in most cases, that's not happening. But what are the other, in addition to that? I'm just kind of off the top of your head. What's the benefit of having that integration, between HubSpot, which is, pretty dynamic platform from a communications perspective, and having all that contact information, versus how it might be stored in a more typical club platform?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
we're
why
all
do it?
drowning. Yeah, I mean, we're all drowning in data, right? I mean, it's you know how do you surface the insights in that data? And I joke, when I was at Michigan State, I worked at Walnut Hills Country Club, which has since closed, but
Yeah.
had a great run there, great people. But at that point in the club industry, our locker room manager, great guy. I mean, he not only knew every member, but he knew their guests and could anticipate needs. Same thing that, the guys that worked the card room, right? They knew all the nuance. As a card attendant, right? I very quickly came to learn that my variable compensation, i.e. tips, was directly correlated to how much I knew about a member, right? And again, it's like, do they want a dry towel on their cart, or cart that, or towel that's half wet and dry, or two towels? Or, we had some groups where, we knew who drove the cart, who you never paired together on a cart, who liked their clubs turned. I mean, again, it's, but that all lived individually with each of us, right? Like,
Mhm.
so if an employee leaves, um, nobody has that institutional history. And I think that's the idea nowadays, right? If we can capture that information, that nuance, but then get that information where it can be part of the experience, right? It's not living. If it lives in the point of sale, it's too late, right? And I'll go
Right.
back to my dining room days, because I still remember where certain members wanted to be seated in the dining room when they would have a lunch meeting, because
Mhm.
again, it was before LinkedIn, right? That's how you met new clients and customers. So, but
Right.
but if that information lives in the
Imagine
point of,
that.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
There was something to be said about those days too, but we
Yeah,
won't we
yeah, I
won't get
know.
into
I
that.
know.
Um, but if that information, if somebody is walking into one of our clubs, right? Part of our job from where I sit, is to make sure that we can provide that information on a recall sheet, so that they like sit by the fireplace or the windows, or all of that. And I think in this day and age, you just inherently have a lot more staff turnover. But again, so getting that data
Interesting.
to a place where it can be actionable, doesn't do you any good if it's sitting in a system or it's in somebody's head. We've got to make it actionable insights for our team. So
Yeah, that's interesting. And um, so that's one of the advantages for you by having it, in separate platforms, because I think that's one of the things that clubs struggle with is, why do I need? I can already send emails out of my, our through Jonas or whatever it is. Like, I can do my communications that way, and we build our website. I don't understand really why we need to do that? Like, was it always for Arcis? Was it always part of the plan to just do something totally different that way? I mean, even as you're acquiring clubs, I mean, you could have just continued to put in the same, you know, backbone and not really work, right? I mean, and still
Yeah.
run it.
Well, and again, credit back to, Blake, our CEO and founder, because, it was, he recognized that, as we were growing, as a company um, this kind of, you know, system with all these bolt-on, it just wasn't going to be sustainable for our trajectory as a company. So,
Mhm.
again, that's where, we went and we spent, um, you know, say a year plus, in terms of bringing in some expertise from outside, to say, hey, let's go look at, all the providers out there,
Mhm.
in the club management space, from a software standpoint. So, and also, on the CRM standpoint, or, digital marketing and all that, but really CRM, right? Because it's going to boil
Mhm.
down, it's like HubSpot, Salesforce, Sugar, there's a handful of players, that we looked at in that space, and settled in on and HubSpot, and they've been a great partner for us. So, um, but yeah, I think it was, all credit to Blake, because it was really like, hey, we gotta figure this out, and yeah, in just in what we've been able to do now, with HubSpot, not it's do the efficiencies that we gained.
Mhm.
Yeah, it just wasn't. It wouldn't have been possible before. So
Right. So some vision that went into that. Obviously, you're saying from Blake. And so can you just walk us through the like how it works for your clubs today? Just like in the advantages. So someone comes to one of your properties websites, fills out a form that they're interested in joining. Let's just say it's a private club they're interested in joining. You have that happening. That occurs through HubSpot on the front end, I'm assuming. And then
yeah, yep,
how is that used and leveraged later, right? Because they may not actually join. They might, but they fill out a contact form. Can you just kind of walk through your process at Arcis for, a standard operating procedure for one of your clubs? What happens then?
yeah, no, absolutely, and yeah, you're right. It absolutely, from a form standpoint, even we're in a transition with our websites, and a lot of our landing pages are now built in natively in HubSpot as well. Um, so yeah, which is interesting. I'll try not to get too far off before we kind of walk through it, but yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the things is the insights you gain when you have, somewhat of this closed system, right? Where, I can pull a report, and if we have a prospect in the system, I can let a salesperson know, that, hey, Ed was on the website last night on the membership page for 3 minutes.
Mhm.
Um, and you may have filled out your form 3 months ago, right? And said, hey, timing's not right. I'm interested, but timing's not right. I'll come back. Well, now we know maybe maybe you got a big Christmas bonus, right? So now you're like, hey, I'm re-engaging membership. So having that ability to again raise those insights. I think the other thing too is, um, and again, I realized this a long time ago. Most people are shopping, especially now. Um, we do our shopping late in the day, and it's digital. So, and most clubs are either closed or there's not a membership director at the club at 8:30 and 9 o'clock at night. So, how do we leverage that and make it easy? And one of the things you fill out our form, but then immediately we're going to check in with you via text, via email. Do you want to book a tour at the club? And we're going to make that super easy, right? It's click a link, go to the scheduling page, there's a live calendar there, and you're going to be able to schedule your tour of the club because we know, right, everybody's busy. How do we take, instead of you having to go fill out a form and then wait for somebody maybe to email or call you back or all of that, right? It's like, okay, how do we make that super easy? How do we reduce friction in that process? And that's been very popular.
Hmm.
Where again, I know how my household works. We've got, three girls, and yes, they're older, but it's a hub of activity around here, especially right now when they're all home.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I think most households function like that, right? When you look at it, mostly who's joining clubs, right? It's a lot of families, so it's busy. They want to get their kids engaged in lifetime activities, lifetime
Hmm.
sports, so right, so parents are having those conversations 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Hey, what's your calendar? Can we go Saturday and tour the club?
Right.
And again, it reduces that friction. Um,
Yeah. And so once that person becomes a member, you've got their whole life history with the interaction with the club. Are you able, or how would you leverage that information once the person's a member? Is that helpful? And, if nothing else from a reporting and looking at like typical behaviors and things like that, but how do you use that data at all?
Yeah, I would say it's an area of focus that you know um we're focused on doing more in that in terms of segmentation and getting more granular because I think
Mhm.
you know there's this fine. In my team, we do a stand up every morning. We start with a stand up, and we're talking through, and we're consumers too, and
Right.
so obviously we just went through Black Friday. We're going into the holidays, and we talk about, and I won't. It's a golf clothing company that I love, so I won't mention them by name, but
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to them about their email marketing because like, oh my goodness, like, can you please stop not sending me 3 emails a day?
Right.
And yeah, and and that's really our challenge is, how do from a communication standpoint, right? Getting members the right information at the right time through the right channel about the things that they're interested in, right?
Right.
It's like empty nesters. I don't need to send them junior, or swim team information any longer, unless
Yep.
maybe grandkids or whatever. But in most cases, right? And I want if somebody's interested in wine club, let's make sure they're on that list to get them wine club information. So
Right.
and again, I think yes, email, but a lot of people prefer text.
Yeah. Right.
Obviously, push notifications are big. And we have a lot of members too that still love going to the website.
Right.
Um, and one of our challenges, right? How do you make sure it's the right information, the right hours, all of that, orchestrated and out there at the right time. So
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, just to have that full picture story too, and then understanding tendencies and like you said, I mean, to be able to take that information, run a recall, or have some sort of a recall report or something that you can share so people know what Mr. Damer's preferences are, right? Or, the things that they prefer. Um, so, a lot of people would look at might listen to this conversation and say, well, that's Arcis and they've got all these clubs and they're a corporation and they've got a lot of money and we're just a private club that's, member owned and we can't do that stuff. Is there an argument to be made though that, it's, it can, and it's in some cases a matter of priorities. I mean, especially for the clubs that's maybe not the exclusive club. This is always going to have demand, I mean, to some way or another. And there's so many clubs, as you know, that are we call them challenger clubs. That they're trying, and if they could just figure out a couple things, they can be just as big as the big dog. But um, what argument is there to be made in the investment of technology, in the investment of like platforms that can help a club maybe, get ahead instead of feeling like they're always underwater.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, and again, that's not even bringing AI into the conversation either, right? Because I mean, so much is quickly happening on that side of it.
Mhm,
But yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, again, I don't think there's any excuse to be made for not looking at, whether it's HubSpot and there's others out there as well. Um, but in order to be, as resourceful as possible, and you could make an argument, the efficiencies um, are greater at that type of scale because you
mhm,
almost need, you know, you need more help from technology because technology's sweet spot when um, it's making your human capital that much more efficient.
mhm,
And I think there's always two and this case of like, well, we don't want it to be detrimental to the member experience.
mhm,
Um, and I think, I mean, to me, it's accretive, right? Again, if you can be more efficient, provide better experience because you've got the data and nobody's asking them, what their member number is or what their favorite beverage is or all of that. So I think yeah, this day and age with um, uh, the pricing of it's CRM tools aren't expensive in the
mhm.
grand scheme of things. And again can leverage because everybody has limited human capital, right?
Right.
So there's no open blank checkbook for that. So to me the leveraging technology to make the people more efficient, get them to free their time up to think more strategically
Mhm.
um, on the business and not, so much, spending so much time, just in it, but can sit a
Right.
bit more strategically on top.
And then, I mean, there's so much tradition in it, right? And it's like, oh, we've always done it this way. And in some ways, we associate like a member expectation with how we actually deliver that, and they might be totally separate. Like you might be able to have a different operational process, but give the member something with it too. I mean, like you were saying, like someone who knows you when you drop off your clubs or when you come, to the golf course, they can greet you by name and everything, which is so important. And get your variable, what was your variable income, as you
Yeah,
mentioned
my
earlier.
tips.
So,
Yeah, fancy my
yeah,
variable
yeah,
comp. Yeah, my
yeah. Your
tips.
variable comp.
Hey,
I
as
love
a
it.
poor college kid, right? I mean, I still know
No,
the members that were very good tippers that realized I was a poor assistant golf pro back in the day. So
yeah, I just love the variable compensation. But so just in maybe another way of asking that previous question is that if you took over a private club today, let's say you were going to run it, and let's just, I mean, hey, like, as you said, you've been around clubs, you've been your whole life, and you say kind of the typical traditional club, what might be the things that you would look at to say, hey, knowing what I know, here's some things that I think we should prioritize to tackle?
yeah, I mean, to me, I go to the website first. I mean, I think that's um, when you look at I'm always interested by private club websites and I have these internal conversations with myself too, right? In terms of what information should be public facing, what should be out there, but you know that to me first and foremost I'm going to go okay, what's our website look like, what's our messaging, how are we positioning the club and
Mhm,
telling the story of the club. I'm a big believer in landing pages as well because when you run campaigns and do things right, you need to make it measurable, and there's a ton of reasons we could get into about why to use landing pages, but I'm going to focus on that immediately. And then yeah, what is then you get into pipeline management and lead generation.
What do you mean by
the
that? I just stop you on that one because
yeah.
yeah, it's funny because I think a lot of members and board members, if you said, pipeline management, lead generation as it relates to their business, they know, but you marry those terms with a private club and it's like, whoa, what do you mean? Like, so when you think of pipeline management and lead generation, like, how do you see that? Is it just,
Well,
it's new
I mean,
members,
first
right? New
question,
member
who owns
acquisition.
it? Yeah, I mean, who owns it? Who is, yeah, who's responsible for? And again, whatever level of club you're at, right? There's, how are we introducing prospective members to the club? How are, because I mean, every club, and I get there's a lot of clubs out there these days with wait lists, but there's a lot of clubs that don't have wait lists either. But members leave clubs for various reasons. So, yeah. So who owns it, right? Have
Right.
we,
Yeah.
what's the, is somebody coming into the club every day going, okay, how, I've got read sewers, I'm going to the Chamber of Commerce meeting, I'm doing these outbound
Mhm.
efforts. um so to me, yeah,
It's a right people,
who
right seat thing. Yeah.
exactly right. Because if everybody owns it, nobody owns it. So
Right.
somebody has to own that. Somebody should be going to the, weekly department head meeting, and that's what they're talking about. And also, when a prospective member is coming through, and we know they have kids and they're interested in junior golf, have they set it up so when they get to the golf shop, whoever runs junior golf just happens to be standing there, right? And they're the subject matter expert in that, right? So they can talk about that. So
Hmm. Hmm.
um so yeah, so that's, there's a lot that goes into that, but yeah, I mean, I don't think it's not much different than any other space. The fun thing is, people are, it's not like, you know, um, and right, we're adjacent to the Motor City here, right? And people buy cars, but I don't talk to a whole lot of people that get excited about going to the dealership and going through that process and all of that. And that's why you've seen some kind of digital entrees into that space.
Hmm.
But people are generally, they're excited to get to the country club. They're excited to get to the golf course. You're right. They're investing in a lifestyle. So I mean, that's what I love about it. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you build on that?
Yeah. So going back though, I mean, it really is from what following your path, I think I threw you off a little with the lead generation and pipeline management stuff, but it really is, I mean, from what you're saying, a lot of it is if you were to take over a club, I mean, it is automation, right? Accountability for some of this stuff,
Yeah.
in developing those efficiencies, leveraging technology. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah. It's
hard, man,
people,
isn't it?
process,
Yeah.
product. Yeah.
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 It's,
So
it's, it is funny though, how, there's that idea that I think is out there of like, how do you balance this technology with, old school, you know, member service. And, it's like, it's such a funny, it's a tough puzzle because like you said, even staffing is hard. Keeping people is hard. You're competing with other hourly wage jobs in some cases for really good people. But it's not like technology and really leveraging automation and things like that and exceptional service are mutually exclusive.
oh, absolutely not. Yeah. You know, when you look at, restaurant operators, or, high, the Four Seasons, the high end hoteliers, boutique spas and so forth. I mean, they're all, well, even, I mean, gosh, I mean, I get, my dentist sends me a birthday text and an email, right?
Right.
So it's like, yeah, again, it's just prioritizing that, and saying, hey, this is going to be a priority to, know our members, and surface, so we know when their anniversary is. We know, their joining anniversary, right? And
All right.
besides all those other nuances and whatnot. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think and again, to me that, technology is best when it's leveraging and enhancing what your team can do. Because yeah, like I said, we knew who would always drive and ride and I probably could bore you with some funny Judd Heathcote stories,
Yeah.
because we loved Coach
Yeah. Well,
out there. But he had some nuances to his game. Let's put it that way.
oh, that's funny.
But yeah, I mean, it's, different day and age um, but again, it's so highly impactful and can be to the member experience if you say, okay, here's our operating software, but here's our experience software, on this side of
Mhm.
it, and this is where you know we can host all of this information so I think it really does serve two purposes.
Yeah, interesting. Um, I appreciate your perspective on this, and yet it can be really daunting for a lot of people that are in the club space, and a lot of club leaders might tend to be a little bit older, and holding on to some of the old things. But I love your perspective. My last question, just what would you recommend the first thing club leaders do if they're hearing what you're talking about, saying, man, there's an opportunity here for us to maybe do something differently? What would be your first, what would be your recommendation for them?
Yeah, I think it's start small. It's like, okay, hey, we're gonna go try this. And you don't have, how do you eat the elephant, right? It's going to be, it's kind of like one bite at a time. So it's
Mhm.
identifying, okay, what could be most impactful, in our organization, where again, if we're doing surveys and typically a lot of private clubs will do an annual member survey, right? And you get that information back, you know take it. If you don't want to read them all, feed it into AI and have it give you the insights from it, right? And
Right.
then you start to say, okay, where are the opportunities here in our operation where maybe technology could help us out, right? And
Mhm.
and I mean, gosh, it can be everything from staff scheduling, right? We may have a blind spot in terms of like understanding, we need, additional staff at the pool snack shack or,
Mhm.
whatever it is. So yeah, so I think it's fi- y- y- it, it's like anything. Starting is the hardest part.
Mhm.
And you know, probably much easier when you're dealing with one club doing an implementation for
70.
70. Yeah, but
You're like, this is simple. One club, that's it. Let me have my
but
assistant help you with that. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, find that starting spot, and you're gonna get some quick wins. If you're the operator out there, you're gonna get some quick wins. You're gonna be able to come back to your board and say, hey, look, here's how we were able to impact it, and that's, then folks are gonna start to buy in, because yeah, like you said, it's you know, I get, you know, very, I love technology, right? So my go-to is how does technology fix this? But um, any part I've learned again with these bigger implementations, it's the people side of it. It's
Mhm.
the change management piece.
Mhm.
That's the hardest.
Right.
Because it's like, when you start telling a salesperson like, oh, here's your whole new system, here's your whole new process, here's all, um, and we've lived and breathed it for 12 months getting it ready, and but you're dealing with people's livelihoods at that point, right? So you
Yeah.
got to get it right. So that's why I said, start small, get some quick wins, identify, hey, where can it be most impactful, and then
Mhm.
and then, kind of chart your path from there.
Yeah, it's great advice because, I mean, even if you wanted to do everything at once, there's so much. You can't. I mean, you just can't. So you might as well really break it down to something that's very, very manageable. So,
Yeah.
boy, Pat, I really appreciate your time and for sharing your perspective and your experience and what you've seen. And man, you've seen a lot, especially in the growth over the years and of Arcis, and continued success to you and the team.
Well, thank you. No, enjoyed the conversation, Ed.
Thank you for listening. If you find episodes like this helpful, be sure to share it and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're using. Until next time, keep crushing your club marketing.